Welcome to Dale of Merchants. Dale of Merchants is a deck-building game where you're racing to be the first to complete your merchant stall. I will refer to each of these different sets as a suit. A suit is actually an Animal Folk card, as printed on the rules. An Animal Folk card is any non-junk card. A suit or Animal Folk card is basically any of the cards that share a color with the rest of the deck of that suit. To set up, you need to take one of these sets for each player plus one extra. Therefore, for a 2-player game, you would take 3 sets. I will show you the setup for a 4-player game, which means that you'll be taking 5 sets. For most of your games, I'd suggest not using the chameleons, as the chameleons are simply a copy of other cards. To set up for each player, take each deck and give them the number 1 card for each set. Do this for each player, as this will be giving them their starting deck. Note that there are 4 of each Animal Folk number 1 cards in each set. This is because the maximum players is 4 players. For a 5-player game, this will mean you'll be using 5. So you'll fill the rest of their deck with junk. 5 plus 5 will be 10. That'll be your starting deck. If you were playing with 2 players, for example, you'll be using 3 of the Animal Folk cards and 7 junk, giving them a full deck of 10 cards. This will be your starting deck. Shuffle it together, give it to the player, and do so for each player in the game. Once everyone has their decks, you can then combine all the remaining cards into a single deck, shuffle them together, and that will become the market deck. Place the market deck next to the game board, and you'll be ready to play. Please note that if you're playing a 4-player game, you will not have any more of the number 1 cards left, as you'll have given them all out. You will also not have any junk left, as those will all be in players' decks. If you are playing in a 2-player game, you will have some of the number 1 valued Animal Folk cards left, which you need to set aside. You will also have a little bit of extra junk left, which you'll need to set down near the market as its own separate discard pile. These are not to be mixed into the market deck. Before the first turn starts, make sure that you draw from the deck and place them along the market path. Each card in the market is worth their face value, plus along the left, they're worth an amount that is equal to the addition of the number listed. So the farther to the right, the cheaper they should be, as long as the original card is not super expensive. So here we have a 4, here we have a 3 plus 1, we have a 2 plus 2, we have a 5 plus 3, and a 2 plus 4. On your turn, you can do one of 3 things, or do a discard action. The first thing you can do is to play a technique. Techniques are listed with technique on the card. Many of them have pluses on the card face. Any technique that has a plus on it means that after you do this action, you'll be granted another action. And this can be to do anything you like. It could be to play another technique, or it can do one of the other 3 actions. For example, if you were to use this technique here, you would place it in your discard pile, saying that you were going to use it. Then you would take the cards and do as it said on the card, which was to discard your entire hand and draw 5 new cards. The second thing you can do on your turn is to buy a card from the market. To do this, you take all the cards that you want to use to make the purchase, discard them, and take the card that you want to buy and put it in your hand. Finally, the last thing you can do on your turn is to start building a stall. Your stall is an area in front of you that you start putting cards into in an ascending value. You must start with 1 always, which means you might have to use one of your Animal Folk basic cards to start it. You cannot use junk, as it says. You cannot normally use junk in your stall. Now, your stall is also a general term that is referring to the entire area for this list of cards. The cards themselves will refer to stacks when referring to the stall. A stack is an individual set of cards that you'll be using to make your stall. Now, when I said you'll be going in an ascending value, you'll always start at 1. The second one must be 2. The third one must be 3. The fourth one must be 4, and so on. The person who completes their 8th stall first is the winner. Also remember that when creating your stall, you need to use cards that are the same suit. This would go as such. This is an example of 4 stalls, each with their own suit. After purchasing an item from the market, after using a technique that does not have a plus symbol on it, or after building a stack in your stall, you must then refill your hand. Refill your hand back up to the maximum card hand size of 5 and end your turn. The next player will then take theirs. The last thing you can do on your turn is to discard as many cards as you want from your hand and redraw from your own draw pile deck. This could be 1 card, it could be your entire hand. Just simply redraw back up to your max hand card size of 5 and end your turn. Whenever a card asks you to discard a card, it goes into your own discard pile. This would be set next to your draw deck. Whenever a card tells you to throw away a card, it goes into the market discard pile. A market discard pile could be either next to the market draw deck, or if you're throwing away junk, it goes into its own pile. Some cards say that they are passive. This simply means that they happen automatically whenever you use the card involved in whatever action that they say that they do. For example, Cookies says that you can count it as not being in your hand when drawing up to your hand size limit. This means by having this in your hand, you can have up to 6 cards. If you have 2 cookies, you can have 7 cards in your hand. The Squirrel says that you can build a stack using junk. What a great way to get rid of junk. You really should be trying to get rid of junk as soon as possible when playing. Junk is pretty useless and is just a filler for your deck. The Lucky Ocelots says that whenever you use this card, you must roll a dice to see its full value. Just say, I'm going to see how much this is worth this turn. Roll the die. There's a 1 pip on the die. This means that the Lucky Ocelots, or at least this 1 card for the Lucky Ocelots, is worth 2 this turn. When a card is in your stack, in your stall, it is done. You won't have to ever rebuild that stack. Even if someone takes a card from your stall, it is still set into its number, whatever it is, slot. Which means even if someone were to use the acorn, which allows them to steal any card that they like from your stall and put it in their hand, maybe they need to use the ability, you still have that slot. Oh, I want to steal that. Well, let's just put that then here. See, you still have 4 stacks. Even though the stack is now the incorrect value for that slot, you still have 4 stacks. Just remember, once you've built 8 separate stacks in ascending value, and for example, again, to build a 5, you could use 2 2s and a 1. For the 6, you could use 3 2s. For your 7, you could use 2 2s and a 3. And for your 8, you could use 2 4s, or any other combination. One final thing to know about purchasing. You can't overpay using an excess number of cards. You can, however, overpay using cards that do not have an excess number of cards but do overpay in value. For example, I can use this 4 and 2 to purchase this 5 value card. However, I cannot use all of my cards to buy one card that's worth 4. Again, after purchasing, you discard the cards used in the purchase, take the card that you are purchasing, put it in your hand, refill your hand from your deck, shuffle the cards down to the right, and then replace the cards that are empty with the card from the market deck. Continue this until someone has won by building their 8th stall. If you use up all the cards so that you have less than 5 cards in either your hand, your deck, and your discard, and you need to redraw your cards back up to 5, and you don't have any, you need to draw junk. Junk goes into your hand. Here's an example of a stall that is almost finished. On my turn, I'm going to use an empty chest to fill my last stack. I can use any card from any animal folk, which means I can mix suits. So I'm going to use the empty stack, empty chest, favorite toy, and a wily fellow. Even though those are mixed, the empty chest allows it. I have won the game. Now you know how to play. Don't forget that once you're done playing, to break down your game by separating all the suits into their respective piles and all of the number 1 cards with the animal folk pictures on them into their own separate areas and place them all together. That'll make it much easier for you to start again the next time you play.